We're in Washington, D.C. with Dr. John Newton, Executive Director of Terrain, on this edition of Farm to Frankfort. Glad to be here. So Erica, we've been up here in D.C. and we've had a California guy, we had a Florida guy, now we got a Kentucky guy with Dr. John Newton. Now,
he might just cheer for the wrong team.
Well, is there proof of that?
I think so.
What do you got going on over here?
Well, can you hear me all right? There you go. Okay, so I am a Kentucky guy. Grew up in Louisville. Used to work for the American Farm Bureau Federation. My wife actually still works for Farm Bureau. But I went to University of Louisville, so I had to do this. I've got a Farm Bureau shirt on. Hold on. There we go.
What about it? But you got the blue jacket on, so you're still doing okay here, right?
That's right.
Hey, but that is, Eddie, that was a great day, though, where that shirt came from and the logo with the University of Louisville and their Ag Day. It was a really cool day, wasn't it?
They did. University of Louisville worked with us to do an Ag Day and featured Farm Bureau that day at a football game, and it was a great day that they had set up outside and the work they did. And, if we can promote agriculture, whatever it takes, that's what we want to do. And we look forward to what we get to do with it. It's going to go on. I think we're going to do other things with it. So if we can support agriculture, that's what we want, and have a lot of fun with it, too.
Well, I just need an invite.
There you go. Maybe we can do that.
Now that you've got the swag.
That's right.
Absolutely. I've been begging for it. So.
Now you're going to be suited up at the next U of L Ag Day.
I'm going to wear this all day today. I got to go to the hill later. I'm going to wear this up there.
Whatever makes you happy.
There you go.
Well, you did tell us, you're a Kentucky boy. You spent some time working at AFBF, and then you went to the Senate for a little while.
Absolutely. So I was Senator Bozeman's chief economist for 4 years. He called me when he became ranking member on the Ag Committee, and matter of fact, Zippy Duvall always said I was just on loan to the Senate Ag Committee. But I was with Senator Bozeman for 4 years working on a farm bill. Really a highlight of my professional career.
We always enjoyed the time you spent there and working with you. We missed you at American Farm Bureau, but being on the inside, you brought a lot to the table, too.
Absolutely. Well, my wife, like I said, she works at AFBF.
She does.
I travel the country, and they're not shy to tell me that she's the favorite Newton in the Farm Bureau family.
She takes care of a lot of us, I can tell you that.
I know the feeling.
So you left the Senate last year. Can you tell us where you're at now and the work that you've got on your plate?
Absolutely. So now I'm working with Farm Credit. 4 of the largest farm credits in the country have partnered. And how farm credits, they partner across the country in a lot of different initiatives, and they've partnered to deliver something called Terrain. So again, 4 of the largest farm credits, Farm Credit Services of America, Frontier Farm Credit, Ag Country Farm Credit, and American Ag Credit have partnered to deliver Terrain, and we provide market analysis and research to our farm credit partners and their customers around the country. And we've got analysts that cover the waterfront. We've got a specialty crop analyst, a wine economist. We've got 2 protein economists, 2 grain economists. We even have a dairy economist. I see Joe Paul sitting in the room. We really do cover the whole waterfront of ag.
That's important.
Now, we've spent a lot of time getting to talk about what the congressional outlook is like. Can you tell us, though, what the farm economy outlook is like?
I mean, everybody in this room knows what the farm economy's doing today. Matter of fact, I was testifying 2 weeks ago for Chairman Thompson, House Ag Committee, and the title of the hearing was The Economic Crisis in Farm Country. Tomorrow, I'm going to go visit with leadership staff in the House to talk to them about what's happening in the farm economy. And really, you have a tale of 2 farm economies. If it walks off the farm, cattle prices have been record high. Milk margins over feed costs have been volatile, but they've hit record highs this past year. But on the crop side, net cash farm income for corn and soybean producers, lowest level that we've seen in 15 years. And then while farm income is projected to be higher in 2025, it's on the back of historic levels of AdHoc support. It's the $10 billion in economic aid that was provided in the CR, in addition to the $20+ billion for farmers to recover from natural disasters. So the AdHoc support is what's propping up the farm economy today. And I talk to farmers across the country, they'd rather get their returns from the market and not the government.
And our input costs keep going up too. We don't see any relief in that. As these prices have come down, you said 15 years historical lows, and now we're going into fertilizer prices keep going up, all the inputs. So there's got to be some give here somewhere with something. I know the package that was done at the end of the year in the CR was important, but that's going to be a Band-Aid, in my opinion, for a while. We've got to do some trade things. I know you're big on trade. You've done those things, and so those are important issues for us in agriculture.
Absolutely. I mean, production expenses, I was just looking at it this morning, have gone up $107 billion since we did the last farm bill, and every single input category is higher today than what it was when we did the last farm bill. And while I work for Farm Credit, interest expenses have gone up, taxes have gone up, labor costs, we heard from John Walt, every single input category is more expensive, but prices are falling.
And how will tariffs, I know that's the talk of the town, and we hear a lot about it. And one that we hear probably the most about, Eddie, is around Canada and potash and fertilizer.
Absolutely.
What is kind of the most up-to-date talk on tariffs?
What's a tariff? So I was actually last week, I was in near the Canadian border. I was in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and I was in Thief River Falls, Minnesota. Negative 20 degrees. It was very, very cold up there, but that was part of the conversation. We've got an integrated North American market. Oats and flaxseed are now grown in Canada and brought down into the Dakotas, into Minnesota for further processing. So obviously tariffs would impact those farmers. But what I tell them is, now we've got Secretary Rollins in her seat. It's up to us as agriculturists to be engaged. As President Duvall says, get outside your fence row and talk about how these things will impact your farm operation, because now you've got a champion that can go into the Oval Office and advocate for you. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, we know tariffs have a massive impact on any new trade deal that might be negotiated. What do you see as some potential new trade partners or just opportunity for growth in that space? Because we're sitting here in an ag trade deficit for about 2 years in a row.
Number 3 this year.
Number 3 we're heading into. And the only way out of that is through new partnerships and through growth. So can you tell us a little bit about just what you can see as some new opportunities for agriculture trade?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 67% of our exports go to our top 6 markets. Mexico's number 1, Canada's number 2, China's number 3, South Korea, Japan, and the European Union round out that top 6. But in some of the emerging markets around the world, and we just released a new report series on terrain called The Big Shrink. And one of the takeaways of The Big Shrink is in all of our major markets where we do business today, we are already facing population decline. China, the population peaked in 2021. The European Union population peaked in 2020. South Korea, Japan, the population has peaked. That's where we do business. Where population's expected to grow, Africa, for example, only about 2% of our agricultural exports go to Africa. And I've got a good friend that works at USDA, Mr. Whitley, and he talks about when he goes on trade missions, it's, whatever the African language is on the sign, and then Chinese. We are not there. We are not building those relationships, and that's where the Farm Bill comes into play. Your market access programs, your foreign market development programs, we need to go out and invest and build those markets to help reverse this trade deficit.
Absolutely. Last year during our congressional tour, we had the opportunity to hear from Judge Stephen Vaden, who sits on the U.S. Court for International Trade. And one of the things he brought up was people often think that it's only the executive that has the ability to negotiate trade or even bring it up as a subject. But he reminded people that Congress still has a hand in that, and they still have some authority. What can our members do to help get that message to their legislators?
Well, number one, tell the story on why exports are so important for the farm economy. When exports were record high in 2022, what did the farm economy do? Farm economy was doing pretty well. So telling the story about why these export markets are so important, and members of Congress, they understand, they know this. There's, trade promotion authority that folks often say that Congress needs to provide for folks to go out and negotiate these new agreements. But again, I think it all comes down to getting outside your fence rows, talking about why trade is important for your business.
We talked about tariffs just briefly, and we know that the tariffs for Canada and Mexico have been postponed for at least 30 days. Hopeful that will get pushed back even further. But tariffs were instituted on China, and then we had the steel and aluminum tariffs. What is that going to look like for our members?
I think it's still very early to evaluate what that's going to do. The retaliation that China announced was on farm machinery, if I'm correct. It wasn't on soybeans. Right. So I think, obviously people are continuing to monitor what's happening. If there's an impact, what does it mean for agriculture? And then again, we've heard Secretary Rollins in our confirmation hearing said, if agriculture is negatively impacted, we're prepared to step in and help. So again, that's where evaluating how all this is impacting farmers and ranchers across this country. It's important to continue to do that. And then as you notice things, important to communicate that to the folks that can really help.
Absolutely.
I think USDA, I sure hope that they focus on trade issues, because I think that's really important to us. And I know that Stephen Vaden is a trade guy. We know him well, and hopefully if he's confirmed and when he gets on board, that he can work on some of those trade issues with some of the countries that you're talking about and make some deals out there, because we haven't done any trade deals in a long time, I don't think, John.
No, you had the phase one agreement with China.
Right.
You had USMCA, and you had the renegotiation of trade terms with Japan. But I want to come back to the phase one agreement with China. And I don't think a lot of people understand there's a clause in the phase one agreement that said those purchase commitments that the Chinese made were supposed to continue after 2021. And for 3 straight years, they bought over $30 billion worth of agricultural products. What happens if this administration says, hey, let's go back to the table. You didn't live up to all of your commitments that you were supposed to. What happens to agriculture if they come back in our market in a big way? And they were in our market for 3 straight years in a very big way. So I think there's opportunities for this administration to engage on the trade front, engage in ways to give us enhanced, more fair market access.
Something else that we've talked about a lot, and our Commissioner of Agriculture's talked about a lot, is ag is economic development. What kind of new markets outside of just trade, how can we consume more of these products and turn them into value adds? And the popular one has been sustainable aviation fuel. It seems like it's been a big one, but obviously E15 and ethanol in automobiles is still the largest probably market there. What are some other things happening domestically in ways to use these raw commodities here in America?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? Because agriculture is more competitive today than ever before. What are our friends in South America doing? They're raising a record crop. When I was on the Hill, we had an opportunity to visit with Louis Dreyfus, and they said that the largest cotton producer in Brazil raises more cotton than the whole state of Missouri. All right, so agriculture is incredibly competitive around the world. Our market share, we used to represent maybe 50 to 70% of the global trade in grains and oilseeds. Now that's less than a third, because it's much more competitive. And that's why you have to invest in that domestic market, find those products, sustainable aviation, E15, those are all points of domestic consumption that can benefit rural economies.
Yeah. And you had mentioned earlier just the ad hoc support that's been given to agriculture, and also mentioned the Farm Bill and the importance of that for trade. Do you think that as we put together a new Farm Bill, that the ad hoc support that's already been given, what kind of impact is that going to have on these Farm Bill conversations?
Well, I think when you look at the ad hoc support that's gone out the door really since 2018, we've delivered $130 billion in ad hoc support. And what do you think your Farm Bill programs have done over that same period of time? They've delivered about $20 billion in support. That tells members of Congress, and I'll tell them tomorrow when I brief them, the farm safety net's broken. As a matter of fact, I told them 2 weeks ago in the House Ag Committee, the farm safety net's broken. When your largest customer puts tariffs on your product, as they did back in 2018, and your farm safety net doesn't kick in, that's not much of a safety net. Right. And we had producers, the whole time I was on the Hill, said that our safety net today is about 2 inches above concrete. And that's why we need to make those investments in the Farm Bill. And I'll add one final point to that. If you look at the Farm Bill, this is going to be the first $1 trillion Farm Bill that we ever do. 1.1 trillion of it is the SNAP program, and the other 20% is your farm programs, your conservation programs, your crop insurance. You take that amount of money and you divide it over every American and the meals that they eat, 3 meals a day. That's 8 cents a meal that we pay in the Farm Bill to deliver risk management tools and conservation programs that farmers depend upon. Ask anybody in the country if they wouldn't pay a little bit more than 8 cents to make sure that agriculture is economically sustainable and that rural America is economically sustainable. And the answer is clearly a yes.
Absolutely.
And for the safest food supply in the world, too.
Absolutely.
And that's important.
You know, we thought we were going to have the 2023 Farm Bill. Then it became the 2024 Farm Bill. Now it's going to be, hopefully, God willing, we pray, the 2025 Farm Bill. Now, it's Congress has so much on its plate right now, from budget reconciliation, worrying about a tax package, funding the government, which is going to be the first priority since we've got a deadline coming up soon. And Farm Bill is not being whispered outside of the House and Senate Ag Committee. So what do you think the timeline could possibly be for a new Farm Bill this year?
Well, I trust that the staffs are working around the clock to try to get this over the finish line. We know how important the Farm Bill is for rural America. That's why we had to step in the CR and deliver that AdHoc support, because we're running on a Farm Bill that's 2 years expired and extended. So we know that we need to get a Farm Bill over the finish line. And again, that's why Chairman Thompson has asked me to come brief leadership to help convey the sense of urgency in agriculture and rural America on why we need to get a Farm Bill done, why it needs to be high on the priority list of things to get accomplished this Congress. You know, in 2017-18, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, that was H.R. 1. That was the bill number, because we knew how important that was. And the Farm Bill was H.R. 2. We need that same sense of urgency in this Congress.
Absolutely. And we're excited because, and I would agree with you, I do think that staff is working around the clock on this. They've been holding hearings. You got to testify at one of them recently in the House, and one of our own members is going to get to testify this week before the Senate Ag Committee, Mr. Jeremy Hinton, and he's going to get to speak on specialty crops and the important role that they play, and what that's going to look like, hopefully, for a new Farm Bill. One of the other huge things that we are hearing in the news these days, because obviously news seems to be driving a lot of policy, we're hearing a lot about DOGE and what that's doing for the federal government as a whole. But what impact is DOGE having on USDA right now, and what do you think it's going to have moving forward?
You know, that's a question that continues to evolve, you know, almost by the day.
By the tweet.
By the tweet at this point. By the time this airs, it may be completely different. But, you know, I think from a couple perspectives. One, DOGE as it pertains to reconciliation, and finding the spending cuts that are needed to extend the Tax Cut and Jobs Act or potentially make them permanent is one aspect. The programs that farmers and ranchers depend upon is another aspect that DOGE is now touching. And I get the sense that they're just looking everywhere and saying, how have we done things in the past? Can we be more efficient? And if we can, let's get more efficient. And for a long time, we haven't done that.
Yeah. Well, John, we appreciate your time with us today. And before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts besides U of L that you'd like to leave with our members?
You know, I think what you all are doing here is so incredibly important. And again, getting outside the fence row, telling your story. When I was in North Dakota last week, some of the farmers said, you know, how do we tell our story? How do we make sure that people understand, you know, how these issues impact us? And, you know, I said to them, being engaged, getting engaged with your Farm Bureau, getting engaged with your commodity organization, telling your story is critically important. When I worked for Senator Bozeman, he would go to Arkansas, and then he'd come back on Monday morning and talk about what he heard in Arkansas and task the staff to go find a solution to no matter what the challenge was. So even, you know, either in D.C. or when you're back home with your leadership, communicating your story is the most important thing that you can do.
John, thanks for joining us, and congratulations on the new endeavor you're on.
Thank you so much.
It's definitely a cool project, and You're the best economist around in the ag industry. So
you are.
I'm glad you're in that role.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah.